Managing the client, keeping the client happy. This can be really easy and this can be really difficult. Kind of depends on the client. One of the most important things is what we talked about in terms of negotiation and setting up the gig. If you did a really good job of asking all of the questions and setting all those expectations up before you took the job, you've already made your life in terms of client management so much easier. Because now you and the client are on the same page. You're starting from the same place. So if we veer from that, we still have the same reference point to look back to in order to understand each other. If somebody reached out to me, asked me to work for $25 an hour, and that was a really good rate, and I've never had that rate before, so I took it without asking a lot of questions, and now all of a sudden they're asking me to do stuff that I don't know how to do, and their turnaround times are really insane, and this is not the quality of gig that I wanted at all, I have a lot less room. I have a lot less room to make an argument and to push back and set boundaries because expectations weren't set to begin with. Ask questions, seek to understand your client first, then make sure to make yourself understood and get on the same page with all of those expectations before you go in. It makes life so much simpler. Under promise, over deliver. You want to be realistic in your communications about what you can do. You don't want to undersell yourself to the point where they doubt your skill set and they don't hire you. So you want to be honest about what you can do and that you can do good work. That being said, you don't want to promise things if you're not sure that you can't follow through on them. And ideally, you would like to exceed the expectations. You would like the final experience to be even better than they were anticipating. Don't undersell yourself, but also don't make promises that you can't keep. And don't make promises for the sake of making promises. Also, when you're setting up expectations, try to set up expectations that give you wiggle room. Example, if you think you can get a rough cut done in a week, tell them you can get the rough cut done in 10 days. That way, if you do get it done in 7 days or earlier, then you can impress them by coming to them much sooner and having stuff already ready. But if you don't get it done and you need more time, you have more time and you're not hurting the relationship. It's much easier to set a deadline 10 days in advance first than it is to be at 6.5 days and realize that you need 2 more days and try to retroactively have a conversation about how you need more time. Being as brutally realistic about what the expectations need to be at the beginning makes it way easier to impress on the tail end. It's really easy to get caught up in trying to impress the client. It's really easy to get emotionally caught up in feeling their urgency. And if you can just take a breather, take a step back, and be realistic about how long it's actually going to take you to do, and present that, then you have all the time in the world to try to figure out how to be faster and be more impressive. And they'll be way happier. It really is all about managing expectations at the beginning. Think about it this way. If a client is told from the beginning that it's going to take 10 days, and then they get it back in 7, they will be extremely impressed. But if a client is told that they were going to get it in 5, and then they get it in 7, they will be extremely disappointed. In both situations, it took the same amount of time. The difference was not in your quality of work. The difference was in how you communicated what you were going to do. Being brutally realistic about the time and skill constraints at the beginning sets you up for being impressive, setting yourself apart, and being successful in the end. Update them regularly and be transparent and honest about it. There's no reason to craft a bunch of white lies about where you're at. If you're a little behind, say you're a little behind. To be honest, I've been a director and I've been a producer, and it is way better to hear that my subcontractor is behind on something than it is to hear about it after the fact. If I know that they're behind and then I can plan for that, we can avoid a lot of the pitfalls in the future. But if I don't know that they're behind and I'm planning on them delivering when they said they were going to deliver and then they don't, that's way worse. In addition to setting expectations well, you just need to communicate clearly and honestly. You want to bring up issues as they arise. As you get more editing experience, you'll start to know what's your fault and what isn't your fault. I think certain personalities tend to assume that everything is their fault, and other personalities tend to assume that nothing is their fault. And the truth is that it's a mix. Sometimes you've done something and it's your bad, and sometimes it's not your bad. And it's important to know both things. And a lot of times it's very clear. If you told them you were going to deliver by a specific time and then you didn't, that's your bad. Even if you didn't have enough knowledge to know how long it was going to take you, it's still your bad. And you should apologize. But if you gave them a certain delivery timeline, based on the fact that they were going to deliver you the hard drive by a certain date, and 5 days later they still haven't delivered you the hard drive, and you've been consistently reminding them about it, well, then you need to have a conversation about how they are making it impossible for you to be able to edit. You need to move the timelines now. And obviously they'll be understanding about that. If they haven't given you the assets, how are you supposed to edit those assets? So it's kind of common sense, but there's just some social nuances. And this is kind of where it gets a little bit nuanced as well. Like, I can tell you the things to think about, but I can't give you the social and emotional understanding. There's a certain amount of just practicing working with people that will come over time. Another big thing is dealing with scope creep. Scope creep is when a certain amount of work was agreed upon at the beginning, and that work continues to balloon and expand beyond the initial agreement. This is why it's really helpful to have contracts, or at least a written email or DM or text thread that you can refer back to, so that if scope creep occurs, you can go back to it and quote it. You want to protect your time and your assets, and you don't want to get roped into doing a bunch of motion graphics when you never agreed to do motion graphics. So if we get to a point where we've done 3 or 4 feedback sessions, and initially we only agreed on 2 feedback sessions, we have gone far beyond the initial scope that was agreed upon. There's been a significant amount of scope creep. We need to have a conversation with the client about that. And this is where it gets a little bit tough, because you have to kind of be firm about your standards, but you don't have to be standoffish. You can just bring it to their attention. Example, hey, blank, I really wanted to be helpful and get this done for you. So I pushed past our initial agreement and did those extra feedback sessions for you anyway. At this point, though, it's hard to justify any more work beyond what we initially agreed upon. If you'd like me to continue to do more work for you, that's fine. We just need to switch to an hourly rate, or we need to agree to expand the invoicing further, or whatever the case may be. Here's the hard truth. And this is a truth that took me a long time to learn. And I got burned several times for not knowing this. Even the people that value you the very most ultimately have to be incentivized for themselves first, right? They've got to provide for themselves and for their families. And they have to build the thing that they've been building, their company or their TV show. So they're incentivized to get their stuff done first. If they're good, genuine people, they're going to want to treat their employees and their subcontractors well. They're going to want to pay you well. They're going to want to set correct expectations. They're going to want to make sure that you are treated well. But ultimately, at the very end of the day, when it's all said and done and the rubber meets the road, they have to protect themselves first. Sometimes when things get really stressful, when things get really difficult, when things hit the boiling point, you as a subcontractor may end up being the one who gets a little bit of that brunt. For example, I worked with a woman on a show who treated me very well. She knew how much I was worth, and she really wanted to pay me what I was worth. But our initial contract was very different. I agreed to be an assistant editor for a very specific amount of time. And when I got there, it turned out that I had way more skills than they were anticipating, and they had way more needs than I was anticipating. And so I went from assistant editing to assembling full scenes almost immediately. And they began to try to ask me to work 12 or 14-hour days, to be on set all of the time, to be assembling significant portions of the last few episodes of this series. And on the one hand, it was a huge compliment. I was very excited to be working on a big show and to be treated this way. At the same time, though, we had agreed to a rate that was not reflective of the skill level of work that I was doing. I had agreed to an assistant editor rate, and now I was doing extremely specialized full story editing. I should have been paid much, much higher. And I wanted to stay on for the whole time. I really wanted to work with them through the whole rest of the season. But 3 weeks went by, and I talked to the producer almost every single day about increasing my rate and making it happen. And she continued to say that she was talking to the network and trying to make it happen, but she couldn't make any promises right now, which I was grateful for. I was glad that she was honest with me. But eventually, by the end of week 3, I could no longer justify giving them so many hours for such a low rate. And I had to relieve myself of the project. I had to stop working for them and stop showing up. And I was sad because I liked the opportunity. And they were sad because they really needed my help. But ultimately, we both knew that it was unfair for me to be getting paid such a low wage. And I could find more work, better paying elsewhere. So I left. The woman was an angel. Eventually, 2 weeks later, finally heard back from the network and was denied my increased rate. But she still agreed to, out of pocket, retroactively pay me for all of my work at the increased rate. So her producer agreed to one small rate, and then she paid 3 times that amount out of her own pocket, just because she wanted to do right by me. What an incredible person. I want to work with her again so badly because she treated me that way. But also, I had no way of knowing that she was going to do that for sure. We didn't have a work history before this. I didn't have a reason to trust her the way that I do now that she's treated me that way. And so I had to do what was right by me. And when the scope of the job far exceeded the initial negotiations and nothing was adapted to cater to the new demands, I had to protect myself. It's a very important thing to do, to know your limits, to clearly communicate them, and to stick by them. And sometimes it means walking away from cool projects, and sometimes it means setting up uncomfortable boundaries, being the stick in the mud for half a second. But it's what you have to do, because you have to be loyal for yourself just the same way that everybody else is loyal for themselves. It doesn't mean that we can't have amazing interactions where producers pay out of pocket to make sure that their editors were taken care of. What an incredible woman. And I'm so glad that I know that about her. And if I can ever get on a set with her again, I will gladly work for her. Gladly work for her for a lot more hours in uncertain circumstances because I know that she's going to do right by me. But I didn't know that yet. She hadn't earned my loyalty. And it's important to withhold your loyalty and your trust until a person proves that they are worthy of your loyalty and trust. This is a career full of ambitious artists, and everybody is trying to make it, and everybody's moving forward. And so you have overzealous producers and excited directors, and even with the very best of intentions, they can overwork a crew and they can create too many demands. And sometimes they do it without even knowing. And if you just call them out on it really quickly, they'll course correct because they didn't even realize it was happening. Sometimes it's that simple. Sometimes communication is all that's necessary. And if they can't make the change, then you've got to evaluate whether or not making the sacrifice for this particular project and this particular group of people is worth it for you. Sometimes it is. I have done many all-nighters. I have done many 16-hour days. And I will probably do more. That's just what it takes sometimes. And in my mind, depending on the people, depending on the project, it's worth it. But you've got to evaluate that for yourself. Not everybody who demands it of you deserves getting it from you. And you've kind of got to protect yourself from a little bit of the filmmaking storm. You do have to work hard, and there are days where you have to kill yourself and put in insane amounts of effort. But overall, I would say you don't have to kill yourself for this career. Maybe you do to make it in Hollywood. Maybe that's why I haven't gotten there yet, because I'm a little too lax. Who knows? But I'm at where I'm at, and it's worked out so far.